Telling the untold.
Fault lines.
And we're back live from the divided states of America. It is time for another 3 hours, another week, that is, of the most disruptive show in American politics. In the politically independent corner, I am Shane Stranahan, investigative radio show host.
And in the left corner, I am the indefatigable, ever vigilant, burning ember in the darkness, your political analyst, Jamarl Thomas.
Together, we make up what you are going to hear again referred to as the most disruptive show in American politics. It is Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. All right. So here's how it goes. First up, we have the headlines. This will repeat at 8 and 9 a.m., often with different headlines. Right now, though, we have the first headlines. Right after these first headlines, Jamarl does his monologue. Then we're taking calls. Then we're going into a half-hour pre-record. We're playing the second half of the pre-recorded interview Jamarl did last week with Greg Palast. That's the first hour. Before we get into that, though, let's do the headlines. A Tampa teen, an Orlando 20-something, and a British 19-year-old were arrested on Saturday for the July 15th hack of Twitter. If you remember this, of course, Jamarl, this is the hack that ended up defrauding. We didn't know what it was at the time. It was over $200,000 at the time. It has now since become over $700,000 of Bitcoin that was defrauded after Twitter was hacked. Users of Twitter were sent false requests for Bitcoin donations that were posted to high-profile accounts. That was a big deal at the time. And apparently, at least according to the sort of official narrative of events right now, it was just these three who were engaged in that. We'll have more on that later, I'm sure. In our next headline, the coronavirus response coordinator for the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that's Deborah Birx, said on CNN on Sunday that she thinks we're in a new phase where COVID is extraordinarily widespread. Specifically, she was saying that people in rural areas should not take this lightly, that people in rural areas are just as susceptible as people in urban areas. Specifically, she said that because people in rural areas live in sort of larger family homes, that she would even recommend that they wear a mask, that they consider wearing a mask if they're at home and they think they might have COVID, if they live with someone with comorbidities. But I just want to take a brief look at this from this perspective. Deborah Birx is now urging people in rural environments to potentially wear masks at home. And I just imagine a lot of people in those environments really not wanting to follow that order. That's pretty intrusive as far as mask mandates go. In any event, in our next story, top negotiators in Congress are still at loggerheads. This comes as Democratic Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on Saturday said the negotiations were at their best yet. That was before Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi on Sunday said that both parties have yet to come to an agreement that COVID-19 is a serious issue. So in the Democratic leadership there, even there you see a pretty divided perspective on how actually equipped we are to pass this bill, to pass this coronavirus relief bill and stimulus package through Congress. In our next story, Microsoft is planning a TikTok acquisition for mid-September. This comes after the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, apparently had a meeting with Trump. This also comes despite earlier protests by the White House against Microsoft's attempts to pick up TikTok, also obviously just part of the White House's move to push away Chinese apps, Chinese software, Chinese businesses in general. TikTok, of course, along with Huawei, one of the two big names in the American mind when it comes to Chinese tech companies. Over the weekend, as the administration weighed TikTok's fate, two GOP lawmakers, Senators Marco Rubio of Florida and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, expressed some support for both the administration's review of TikTok as well as for the Microsoft purchase. In our next story, Senate investigators have demanded all communications and meetings between Strobe Talbott, Fiona Hill, and other Brookings fellows and Department of State officials. Those include Victoria Nuland, Cavill. Stranahan, the former host on the show, referred to as the Shearer dossier in part. This idea that the Steele dossier was sort of cooked up by a team of people close in with the Clinton State Department at the time. Also to be supplied as a part of this request are Department of State communications with Sidney Blumenthal and Cody Shearer. So that last name, I was just mentioning this, the Shearer dossier. We'll get into it more soon, but this is a big story in the context of the whole Russiagate saga, scandal/saga. New York City Our next story, New York City has had more shootings so far this year than all of last year. So far, 770 people have been shot. That was as of Sunday, compared to 2019's total shootings of 776. And in our next story, 7 missing Marines and 1 sailor are feared dead after a search was called off on Sunday. The men were part of a training mission with an amphibious assault vehicle that left 3 others known to be either dead or injured. So 1 other was dead, 2 others were injured. 16 people went on this thing, and now 8 are missing. They believe that they're probably dead, sadly, probably lost at sea. In our next story, Hurricane Isaias is currently slowly sweeping up the East Coast. Right now, it's centered just off of Florida's East Coast and is expected to make landfall near Myrtle Beach late Monday into Tuesday. So people in that region should be watching out. I also see it sweeping up the coast towards Eastern Virginia, towards D.C. So it's expected to have an impact over the course of the week. We'll be watching its course. Over in Europe, a heat wave has left London with its highest ever recorded temperature of 100 degrees. San Sebastian on Spain's northern coast saw temperatures of 107 degrees Fahrenheit on Thursday, the hottest temperature there on record for them going back to 1955 when they started recording temps. The city of Palma on Spain's Mediterranean island of Mallorca set a local record of 105 degrees on Tuesday. And then I'll do this as the last story this morning, probably a slightly different headlines later on this morning. But the first U.S. spaceship to return to Earth from the International Space Station in decades has successfully landed back at home on our little blue dot. This was a SpaceX mission. This was using the Crew Dragon, which is one of SpaceX's spaceships, specifically its smaller Crew Lander. In any event, those are headlines. You're listening to Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. So, Jamarl, hope you had a good weekend. What's going on today, man?
So yesterday was my wife's, our anniversary. We've been together at this point for 5 years? And 10 years. 9 years, technically. And because we were together for 9 years, but we've been married for, I think, 4. So next year is going to be 5 and 10. So it wasn't bad. Everything was good. No big issues at all. The thing I want to talk about this morning is America. I want to talk about America. Now, I know that the moment that I say America, what that means to each and every person under the sound of my voice is going to be somewhat different. So even though we're using one term, we're talking about basically different things, despite the fact we're talking about that one term. Now, those things may be positive, those things may be negative, those things may be somewhere in between. But at the end of the day, when we are talking about a concept, that concept, for better or for worse, is different according to each individual. How do you get 300 million people or more to fall under the umbrella of one banner? Meaning, under this notion of law and everything else, even this idea of America in and of itself, how do you get people to give their life? How do you get people to have these political fights? And understand that oftentimes many of the debates that we'll be having, especially in the political contest, will be vitriolic. How do you get those political actors to still fall under the banner of what is in the best interest of America, even if they don't necessarily agree? When Merrick Garland was put up by Obama, and Merrick Garland was put up as there is no way they could turn down Merrick Garland. And yes, they did indeed turn down Merrick Garland. Turned down Merrick Garland to the point where Merrick Garland just sat there almost in a penalty box, not knowing what was going to happen until he was finally given the boot. That was Obama's pick. It was the person Obama was supposed to get. And it was the person that the Republicans at that point had said, hey, maybe we'll let the Supreme Court die on the vine. Who says we need a Supreme Court? That's where they were. Now think about what that means, though. Despite the fact that they don't like Obama, despite the fact that they're not in power, at the very least, there's supposed to be this notion of loyal opposition. What that means is that you're supposed to be loyal to the higher ideal of the country, even beyond your specific and individual party. That's important, right? Otherwise, what do you have? You basically have a country of political actors that are willing to slit the throat of America if it means that they get higher or advance further in political office. Is it supposed to be that way? If we're talking about any notion of law, any notion of political discourse, even any notion of people interacting with one another, should there not be an ideal that goes higher than the specific political aims and objectives of the person who's involved. When, what is the gentleman name? I can't think, it's Cowboy. And he made the point that says, John F. Kennedy, I didn't vote for him, but he's my president. John Wayne. That's getting at that. Regardless of what you want to think John Wayne is, and regardless of whether or not he even believed it, he is hitting up on something that's real and something that's somewhat fundamental that I think we have shown that to be not necessarily true, or at the very least we've gotten to the point where it's no longer true. We have, 150-some thousand people dead? And that wasn't because that needed to happen. That was entirely because the president was more focused on economic needs as opposed to human beings. Again, if indeed you have this higher ideal of America, it would go beyond the party thing. Democrats, for their point, are trying to basically avoid debates. Now, think about what this means. Debates are not necessarily there for a performative show. At least, I know that's the way they've gotten in many respects, but they weren't supposed to be there for that. Your guy goes out and debates their guy. The public gets the view and make a determination about who they think is best and chooses. Now, if you try to avoid debates for me, and I might be in a worst case scenario, you've deprived this country of being able to take a look at both candidates on stage. The moment that you get into this notion of politics above and beyond even America itself, you will get to that thought of, why do we even need to have the debates? We're already ahead. Look at how far we are in the polls. Any debate can only hurt Joe Biden, so why do we even need the debates? And this is kind of my point. It goes beyond just the specific individual interests of a candidate on whether or not you have a debate. It goes into this larger idea of what it means to be in a democracy and having the people who are, yes, not greatly liked. One guy doesn't seem to be altogether there, and yet you have them stand up there and hit each other in the face over and over again for 2 hours. If I have to suffer through a Biden-Trump campaign, I at least want to see that. It's not right, and I'm saying not right from the standpoint of a democratic system, to try to get to the point of saying we got an advantage and so we don't necessarily want to have the debate. That is problematic to say the least. And that is trying to instantiate an advantage and coast all the way to the White House, as opposed to actually getting involved and having the political back and forth and let the public choose. This is Newsweek. Democratic strategists and supporters of Vice President Joe Biden are urging him not to debate Donald Trump in the lead up to Election Day, citing Trump's public publicity stunts and disregard for the rules in 2016. Where does this end? Right? Part and parcel to the reason that we have laws in the first place is because it would be somewhat anarchy if everybody did everything that they wanted at any particular time they wanted. The Republicans screw over Merrick Garland, and Democrats at this point say, well, we get to have ourselves a whatever, and feel completely justified in doing so, whether or not it goes against democracy or not. This is the war thing. Somebody killed this person, so I'm going to kill this other person, which justifies the killing of somebody else, which this perpetual motion machine of anger and hate and resentment. I don't know where it ends. I would say we need to get back to some kind of primary idea of what it means, at the very least, to be a citizen in this country, or at the very least have an idea that goes beyond the personal, individual, selfish gains of any particular moment. This is abominable. You should debate Trump. If you feel that strong in your position, you should have the debate. Even if you didn't feel that strong in the position, you should have the debate. Because the fact of the matter is the debate goes beyond you and your party's individual aims into what it means to be a representative government in and of itself. I'm going to end this here. You guys are listening to Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Fault Lines.
By Any Means Necessary is your guide to the movement and efforts shaping the world around us, from mass incarceration.
No longer am I interested in or concerned with prison reform. I am interested only in the eradication of prisons.
To the battle between police and water protectors.
It was a pretty punishing disregard for the sanctity of human life, that unleashing water cannons on peaceful, prayerful water protectors.
From efforts to protect the environment.
The climate movement is ready to, with plenty of opposition research and force and strength, along with, the right of both science and morality to fight them on this.
To the movement for Black Lives.
When I first saw the Michael Brown video, when I saw that it clearly contradicted the narrative put forth by the Ferguson Police Department and by police supporters in general, 3 words came to mind: color me shocked.
Stay tuned to By Any Means Necessary, 5 days a week here on Radio Sputnik.
Fault lines.
Welcome back to Fault Lines with Jamarl Thomas and Shane Stranahan. Quick note here, we're taking calls this segment, 202-521-1320. That's the number you should call if you want to call us. Again, that number is 202-521-1320. We're also on the air giving you info on where you can listen to us. If you're in the DC area and you want to catch us on the air, we're on 105.5 FM, also 1390 AM. If you're in Kansas City and you'd like to listen to us on the radio, we're on 102.9 FM and 104.7 FM there, also 1140 AM. We're also online, Spreaker, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, on Apple Music, on Spotify, the pretty well-known music playing app Spotify. You can also catch us on video on YouTube, youtube.com/ actually just you do a quick search for Fault Lines Radio on YouTube. Also, Jamarl, is your channel back up? What's going on with that?
My channel is back up. We're back up.
There we go.
This is the first Fault Lines since being back on the air. So there was a few shows. It's funny, on Saturday when the channel came back up, I think it was like at 12 at night or something like that. I was like, I got to do the news. And so it was like doing the show all night. But no, we're back up. We're live. We are live.
It's fantastic, man. Yeah, so people can find us there too. You can do a search for Fault Lines Radio, but you can also do a search again for Jamarl Thomas, Jamarl, Jamarl Thomas. That'll get you to his channel where he is now live, and you can see him over there. He is wearing his Superman shirt, so I don't mean to give away too much, but I can just inside view here of the public live stream. Anyway, you can also catch us on Twitter, on Periscope. Go to twitter.com/faultlinesradio. You can find us there right up top. We have the live Periscope feed going. All right, that's everywhere you can find us. With that out of the way, you know what? We should go to calls. We should go to Tarif in New Orleans. You're on the air. What's going on, Tarif?
Good morning, gentlemen. Yesterday I got lucky. I made it through to George Gallery's show. And I talked about the frontline doctors being censored, stuff like that. He didn't agree with it either. The doctors brought up hydroxychloroquine. Okay, my doctors in Lakeland came up with another protocol dealing with prophylaxis. Quercetin, 500 milligrams once a day. They got zinc 25 milligrams once a day to try to prevent COVID-19. I had added that to y'all link today underneath y'all tweet. And also, they got a rumor circulating around. I don't know how true it is, but it's just a rumor. I don't want to spread anything myself, but I'm constantly seeing it. They constantly saying that these people coming from the right saying that what's his name? Joe Biden's going to be replaced because his cognitive abilities is decreasing, and they're going to replace him with somebody else. And the rumor is that they're going to replace him with Hillary Clinton. I don't know how true this is, but I'm seeing this spun around on Twitter, on the internet. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say for today.
Yeah, you got to watch out. You got to watch out for some of the things you read on the internet. I could see that. I could see that, but there are a lot of rumors going around, about practically everything. Anyway, Tarif.
It's like
Tarif,
I don't want to spread this rumor. I don't want to spread this rumor, but here it goes. Here it goes either way. Ingrid from DC. What's going on, Ingrid?
Good morning. On Friday, Jamarl interviewed Max Blumenthal, and the first item that they discussed was the protests in Portland, Oregon. Now, I have a great deal of respect for Max. I think he's done excellent work on a lot of topics, but I don't think that Portland is something he has a lot of firsthand experience with. I was really pretty amazed that you completely ignored the fact that there were violent riots. Now, there's three possible explanations for the violence. One is that it's not the actual Black Lives Matter people, that it's Antifa doing it. A second explanation is that there's accusations that these are actually white nationalists who are stirring this up, agitating. And a third one, people have accused even the police, whatever. But to present the whole case as though there were no violent activities and that the police were firing on peaceful protesters is absurd, because it's now all over the internet. We can see for ourselves. There have been fires, there have been mortars, firecrackers launched, attacks on the building and on the police, and they have had a great deal of restraint.
The majority of the protesters are